Welcome to another fresh edition of the Tom Green Podcast. And for the new listeners and for my regular listeners, I have some big news for all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, my podcast is on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on the Apple app, welcome to the Tom Green Podcast. I am Tom Green, at TomTV23 on Twitter, also at Tom Green Pod for the podcast. Been working on this show for pretty much since I've been in high school, and now I'm more than 5 years out, and now I finally made it onto Apple Podcasts. So, without further ado, thanks to everyone listening, obviously. We brought in Mike Schneid from a site called Mike Drops Sports. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me. Congrats. That's really exciting news. Happy to hear that for you.
Oh, I know. And you're the first guest on the Apple Podcasts edition of the show.
I'm honored for that. I'm very excited to talk to you. I'm honored that I'm the first Apple Podcast participant.
Of course. So first I'll ask you, tell us a little bit about your site, Mike Drops Sports.
Yeah, so it's still evolving. It's a few months old. Right now, really I'm focusing the concept around kind of putting a nostalgic touch on present events. So if you look at, a game like on Saturday, LSU versus Alabama, I'm kind of looking at that 7-game win streak that Alabama has against LSU and some of the NFL players that the two teams will produce, not necessarily what's going to happen Saturday since everyone's talking about that. Or when you think about, last Sunday and how the Bears have now won 5 straight against the Jets, or this week, the Falcons have won 5 straight against the Redskins. Last time Washington won was 2003 with Steve Spurrier. Trying to kind of give those kind of facts and those kind of statistics to the fans.
Very interesting. Also, Blake Bortles has never lost a Super Bowl. Hashtag Blake Bortles facts.
That's true. There's a lot of those. That's one of the most truest ones. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks out there that have lost a Super Bowl. Tom Brady has lost 3. Peyton Manning has lost 1. Actually, he's lost 2, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So, Blake Bortles has never lost 1.
So it's another one of my favorite Twitter accounts is Blake Bortles facts.
It's the best one.
Because they'll throw the most random facts out there with Bortles, and sure enough, they're very true. So definitely check out Mike Schneid's site, Mike Drops Sports, and he throws in podcasts and articles and facts seemingly every day, it seems like.
Yeah, definitely trying to. We got the college football Week 10 picks, NFL Week 9 picks up, and some college basketball previews are going to drop this weekend, especially this morning launched the College Basketball Conference Preview article.
Very interesting. So go check out that as well, and we'll get to our little NBA and college basketball talk. And, of course, I also talk football as well, and I'm hoping that LSU wins Saturday, but I think that Alabama might be just a little bit too much for them.
I think so. I actually, to spoil what I put on my podcast last night, they're going to cover that 13.5. I don't think they're going to struggle. I'm taking the Tide with the points. I don't think LSU is on the same level as them.
Nor does seemingly any team seem to be on the same level with Alabama at this point. But we'll definitely see what happens. So, NBA talk. Let's first start off with the surprises so far. Which teams have surprised you so far in the 8 games in the NBA season?
There's only one, and if this doesn't surprise you, then you just haven't been paying attention to sports for the last 50 years. It's the Kings. The Kings are 6-3. I have no idea how. I had them pegged for one of the 3 worst records. I had Dave Yeager pegged as the first coach fired. And it blows my mind that they have 6 wins at this stage in the season.
Yeager had taken a Grizzlies team to the playoffs that seemingly was like an NBA 2K team that I would build, and took them actually kind of far in the playoffs. So in a way, I guess maybe I'm not so, but I totally get where you're coming from. Yes, it does surprise me as well that Sacramento is 9 games into the season, they have 6 wins. De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield have really stood out for that team so far early in the year.
Yeah, triple-double last night for Fox. I'm very impressed. He had a rough rookie year, so I'm very impressed with the way that he's bounced back this year.
Yeah, De'Aaron Fox at 73.5 DraftKings points. Yes, ever since, if you saw last week, it was last week, I had hit for 300 on DraftKings, and I decided to start taking that up regularly. Don't worry, I only play just $1 games, so that I don't go broke. But De'Aaron Fox was a pick I had last night, and he had 73.5 points. Like you said, a triple-double.
That's crazy.
Plus, Derrick Rose. I had him in one of my lineups the night before with the 50-burger for the Timberwolves. Great story there.
That was amazing. I was actually at the Knicks game that night, so I didn't get to watch it live, but that was amazing. It's one of those things. If you're not happy for Derrick Rose, then what are you doing? The guy has been through so much. It was his first offseason in like 8 years that he didn't have a surgery. It was great to see. And it was great to see the teammates. He's only been in Minnesota for not even a full year now, and everyone mobbing him afterwards, dumping the water on him in the locker room. It was just a really cool sight to see everyone on that team so happy for him.
And he was holding back tears in a post-game interview because how exciting it was for him, exciting it was for the Timberwolves, especially with the Jimmy Butler saga going on. And
I think one thing with Derrick Rose that I learned when he was with the Knicks is, he has a son. I forget how old his son is, like 5 or 6 years old, and I think that's why he got emotional. I think he was super excited that if his son's 5 years old, he hasn't really seen the Derrick Rose. So it's just the greatest game that his son has ever seen him play. I think that meant a lot to him.
Oh, I definitely imagine dropping 50 with your son, seeing it is just amazing. Plus Blake Griffin, of course, with the 50-burger last week, which was great for my Pistons. So yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, your Pistons, I don't know if they're surprised or not. They're at 4-3. What do you think about the Pistons so far? Who's your surprise? Also, you asked me, who's your surprise?
Absolutely. Well, my surprise right now, besides the Sacramento Kings, honestly, I think the Bucks. And yes, I think they would have been in the playoffs, right? If we're going to the playoffs this year, but 7-1 so far with a very hot start. Antetokounmpo has done well, so has Bledsoe. The Bucks have surprised me this early, going 7-1. I thought with a new coach, Budenholzer, I thought they would have a slower start, maybe around the 8 line, 3-4, 3-5. But 7-1 has really impressed me. We'll see how they continue the rest of the year. Also, Toronto, new coach, same thing. New coach. Yes, they were expected to do decent, but this well to start the year, that's quite an accomplishment so far. Both the Bucks and the Raptors at 7-1. Those will be my surprise teams.
Yeah, Kawhi Leonard really hasn't had a hard time acclimating, has he?
Right.
I agree. I thought the Bucks and the Raptors were supposed to be very good, probably top 4 teams, but I thought it would take a month or so, new coach, new system, and then with the Raptors, Kawhi kind of coming in there. I'm really impressed and a little bit surprised in how those two teams have just come out of the gate firing.
Yeah, the Raptors at least haven't had to nurse anything bad so far, if you know what I mean.
Touché.
Nick Nurse, the new coach. So, I will answer your question about the Pistons here. 4-0 to start the year. In fact, I actually have a running joke on my TomTV23 Twitter. Ever since the Pistons traded Billups for Iverson, they have been a dumpster fire, it seems like, to say the least. Only made, 2 playoff appearances, if that, since then? And so, since I really got on Twitter a lot, every time the Pistons win, I'll tweet #PistonsWin with a question mark instead of an exclamation point. And it's kind of an ode to Ron Burgundy. I'm Ron Burgundy? Pistons win? And
it's funny that you make a mockery of it. I was big on the Pistons coming into the season because you mentioned Nick Nurse. I love Dwayne Casey. I think he's a great coach, and I thought he was going to bring a lot to the table. I think when you bring in a star like Blake Griffin, sometimes he needs a training camp. Sometimes you need time to acclimate. So I thought with Blake Griffin coming in from day one and Dwayne Casey that I'm not surprised that the Pistons are 4-3 at this stage.
Yeah, and I hope that we hit 50 wins this year. I mean, I hope we can make a playoff appearance now with the East wide open. But as far as being a Pistons fan, I've kind of got that realistic mojo to where like, all right, let's see if they can continue this throughout the rest of the year and see if I'm buying this just yet. I like Dwayne Casey. I thought it was crazy that Toronto fired him simply because he couldn't beat LeBron. Well, now, even though Toronto's doing well, it seems as if the joke's on them because LeBron's no longer here, and your NBA Coach of the Year got fired and is now doing good things in a new home.
Yeah, it was a bit of a short-sighted, aggressive move. I definitely did not agree with it.
But so far, we'll see how the rest of the season goes for them. And of course, there will be other NBA podcasts throughout the year. But 7-1, very good for Toronto, and 4-3 as well, decent for Detroit. Now, let's turn the focus to your New York Knicks.
Let's not.
Understandable.
No, I'd love to hear your thoughts. An outsider from Michigan. How do you think the Knicks are doing this year, and what do you think about the Knicks in general? And then I can give you my thoughts.
Absolutely. I didn't think the Knicks would do all that well, but I like Porzingis.
Well, he's been out.
Exactly. He's been out with the ACL tear from last year, if I'm not mistaken. And I thought the Knicks would be okay, but as far as the NBA, okay in the East is like 35 wins, if that. So, yikes. I mean, good for Tim Hardaway. I mean, Tim Hardaway's a Michigan man. I'll always be rooting for him, but yeesh, the Knicks are not the Jerry Seinfeld, George Costanza Knicks of the 90s that they always went to games during the sitcom.
No, they're not, and they're getting there. So the Knicks are 2-6, and like you said, the Knicks stink. There's no expectation that the Knicks were going to be good. I think this season has gone as good as it can be, even with the 2-6 record, because what the Knicks need to do is build stability and build a culture, and they're doing that, and they're developing young guys. Noah Vonleh, who nobody seemed to want, came on to the Knicks as the 17th man, made the roster. He's averaging a double-double. First-round pick Kevin Knox has been out, but their second-round pick Mitchell Robinson has been starting. He's been really good. Alonzo Trier was undrafted. He's been really good. Good example of why this season's a success. Wednesday night, playing the Pacers on ESPN. Took the Pacers down to the wire. They lost, which is good for the draft pick for 2019, but they looked good. They didn't embarrass themselves, which is what the Knicks typically do on national TV. I know we lost by 28 to the Warriors last Friday, but the Knicks had the lead 2 minutes into the fourth quarter, and then the Warriors happened and Kevin Durant happened. But so you can't be mad at the Knicks for that. But they're in every game. Only the Heat last week they got blown out of, but they've been in every game, and they're losing games to the Celtics, Warriors, and Pacers, and they look respectable and they look like a real team. I think David Fizdale is the right coach. I think they have some of the right players. They're going to have a top 5 pick in 2019, and they're going to have the cap space to bring in some more talented players. Hopefully more talented players than Tim Hardaway in 2019.
And of course, I have to ask, do you realistically think that there's a chance that KD comes to New York?
I don't know. It depends. Because I don't know what's going on inside his head. It's like, if you want to win, you're not coming to the Knicks. But if you want to be challenged, and I'll tell you this, if he comes to the Knicks, the day he signs, within an hour, there will be a statue out in the middle of Times Square. Basketball's the biggest thing in New York City. He's going to be an absolute god. People are going to idolize him and kiss the ground that he walks on. If that's what and he doesn't get that in Golden State because it's Steph Curry, because it's Klay Thompson's team. He didn't really get that in Oklahoma City. If that's what he wants, he can I can see him coming to the Knicks. I don't know if you just don't know what this guy wants. And I don't know if anybody knows.
That's very true. So with that, we'll actually focus a little bit more on the Western Conference, as we've talked about the East for quite a bit. Golden State, no surprise, on top. 8-1. They pretty much seal them into the playoffs. You might as well even seal them at the Larry O'Brien Trophy. Of course, we'll see how that plays out as well.
Well, to that point, let me ask you this about the Warriors. They're 8-1, like you said. Do you think it's possible that anybody beats them 4 times in the playoffs?
That's a very good question, and as of right now, in my NBA preview that unfortunately we had to cancel, but I did with a regular mind, Ben Probst. I'm not sure if you heard that show, but I had talked about Houston, and I thought that perhaps they could be the team that beats them, because they were a Chris Paul injury away from actually doing it. But Houston has looked very disappointing so far at 1-5, and so far, if they continue to go on the slide that they have, I really do not see a team beating them 4 times. Maybe New Orleans takes them to 6, but besides that, I just can't find a team right now that'll beat them 4 times in a row. Or 4 times, excuse me.
I agree.
And so, with that being said, we can also talk a little bit about the Lakers here, of course, because this is an NBA podcast, and we know that NBA Twitter is full of Lakers takes, if I'm correct. Because it's the LeBron show. It's not the Wake show, it's the LeBron show. Magic pretty much read Luke Walton, the Riot Act, today, if we've been watching NBA The Jump. Give me your take on that. Does Luke Walton survive the season if the Lakers continue to go on this slow start?
Here's the issue with Luke Walton and with Magic Johnson and with the Lakers. If you remember in 2010, his first year with the Heat started 8-9, and oh my God, the sky was falling, and everybody hated the Heat because they were terrible. But of course, they went to the finals. When he returned to Cleveland, I believe they were something like 10-12 when he first got there, and I think they actually got to like 20-20 before they made their run in 2015. This was going to happen with the Lakers, and you're naive if you thought that they were going to be 8-1 and match the Warriors. And I think all these, like you said, Twitter, all these bandwagon Laker fans that are coming out of the woodwork, I think they just assumed, oh, Lakers, Showtime, LeBron, let's go. We're going to be 10-0. We're going to be the best team. It was never going to happen. I think the Lakers are going to be fine. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I said before the season, they were always destined for that 6, 7, 8 range until they get a legitimate co-star, not named Lance Stevenson, for LeBron. They were never going to compete for the top of the West. I know things look a little bit bleak right now, but I think they're going to be fine. LeBron has such a specific style and way that he plays that I think it's going to take everybody a minute with all these young guys to sort of follow his lead and for them to all gel together. What do you think?
Now, if we remember from a few years ago with Lance Stevenson, air can only travel so far coming out of a person's mouth. So with that being said, I tend to agree. I think it's being a bit overblown because of LeBron, but with Magic reading the Riot Act to Luke Walton, I think that this will spark a fire in this team. Will it happen immediately? Maybe not. And perhaps maybe Luke Walton could become the martyr of this team if, per se, they fall to like 10-30 or something like that. Now, I don't think they're going to fall that far back. I think 20-20 is realistic. However, I do see the Lakers finishing around 48 to 54 wins, roughly, and getting into the playoffs as around the 4-5 line, actually. And perhaps if they get to 20-20, maybe they fall to 7-8. But the West last year, 3-7, if I'm not mistaken, were separated by 3 games. That's how close the West is, and how good the West is.
Yeah, and that's why I still think they'll bounce back and go on a run, but that's why their rough start is a little bit concerning. That's why the Rockets at 1-5 is concerning, because, like you said, 3-7 separated by just a few games. You could overcome a bad start, but at the end of the year, those 1 or 2 games might actually make a huge difference.
Yeah, it could make the difference whether you're hosting Utah or at Golden State. Just saying the hypothetical.
Right.
So, with that being said, moving from NBA to the college game. Now, I have the AP Top 25 up, and I'll start off with, believe it or not, Loyola of Chicago, of all teams, were within 3 points of a top 25 spot in the Associated Press.
I mean, that's crazy. If you're going to base, what are you basing these polls off of? Because they have their whole team returning and their coach returning. So, look, they're probably not going to go back to the Final Four, but everybody's back. So, what are you basing these polls off of if you're not putting them in the top 25? You're going to put Nevada number 7, but you're not going to put Loyola in the top 25.
That was another thing that made my head scratch, was that in the AP Top 25, 7 and 8, Nevada and North Carolina do not have first place votes. Now, Nevada probably doesn't deserve one, but besides the point. But Villanova at 9 had one first place vote.
Yeah, that surprises me. They lost a ton. I mean, they lost 4 players in that championship team. I like Phil Booth and Eric Pascal. I don't know how much those guys are going to be able to fill the void left by, Spellman and DiVincenzo and Brunson. But we'll see. The Big East is not necessarily a powerhouse conference. It's wide open, so Villanova can certainly make a run. It's definitely weird to see, like you said, the number 9 ranked team has 1 vote.
And of course, Nevada and UNC do not. So you told me before we went on the air that you're a big Cincinnati fan. Now, I'll give you a little joke here before I have you talk about your Bearcats. In one of my communication classes with Dr. Dave Schneider, we had to present a teaching lesson on one of the theories of communication. And I did the coordinated management of meaning theory, and the theorists were Pierce and Vernon Cronin. Now, of course, my funny self decides to change that to Steve Pierce and Mick Cronin, just so that I would generate some laughs in the classroom. So whenever I hear Cronin, I think back to that joke.
I like that.
So talk about your Mick Cronin-led Cincinnati Bearcats.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting season. They've made the tournament 8 straight years. Just one Sweet 16, though. I don't really want to touch on last year in Nevada because that was supposed to be the year. But the problem with Cincinnati coming into the season, I guess we're technically, considered ranked 34th or 9th in others receiving votes for whatever that's worth. Mm-hmm. The top 3 players from last year's team are gone to graduation or to the NBA. So I think it might be a tough beginning of the season. I'm really excited. So Wednesday night, this team returns back to their on-campus arena. We played in Northern Kentucky last year, and we do so, you'll appreciate this, against Ohio State. So, fun fact, Ohio State has not, despite the fact that Columbus and Cincinnati are 4 hours from each other, Ohio State has not played at Cincinnati since 1920.
Wow.
And then the new coach, I guess Holtman, I'm blanking on his first name.
Chris Holtman.
But, Holtman comes in, and he's just like, why don't we play Cincinnati? They're an in-state rival. I want to play all the in-state teams. Ohio State, as a brand, is supposed to be better than Cincinnati. It's supposed to be better than Dayton, so we should be playing them to prove that. And I love that attitude. That's great to me. And he's right. They should be better. We'll see on Wednesday if that holds up, but we signed the home and home, and I know everyone's really excited for that. Long term, the AAC is a terrible conference, and there's no surefire top team. So I'm definitely excited to see if this young team can kind of gel together, win back-to-back titles, and get back to the tournament for a 9th straight season, which would be a really great accomplishment. How do you see Michigan? They come in at 19, 18 in the coaches poll. Where do you see them kind of fitting in comparison to Michigan State and some of the other powerhouses of the Big Ten?
Well, coming in at 19th, we lost, of course, our big guys. Kind of blanking. Mo Wagner, of course, Duncan Robinson. So now Teskey has to fill in the middle. And right now it's looking bleak a little bit, but I have faith in the Michigan coaching staff as far as Michigan State. Ohio State, it's going to be a tough battle. The Big Ten is always tough, and my dad and I have always said, you win 20 games, you're in the Big Ten, you deserve to get into the tournament. Now, that didn't happen with Nebraska and Penn State last year because the Big Ten was slightly weaker than we thought they were last year. But
yeah, that comes down to non-conference wins. Those teams beat nobody. They beat up on the Big Ten teams, but in a weaker Big Ten, they're just not going to get that credit.
So right now it seems as if Poole and Xavier Simpson are going to have to lead this team along with Teskey, Austin Davis are your upperclassmen right now. But a lot of freshmen. DeJulius, Colin Castleton, Brandon Johns Jr., your freshmen on this team. So Beeline's got his work cut out for him, but we went to a national championship last year with a team that I didn't think deserved to go to a national championship, that is. Of course, they deserve a tournament spot, but as far as championship, they just got hot at the right time. So this team has got his work cut out for him, and I think they're up to the challenge.
Yeah, I did not have them going very far in my bracket last year. But, how was it last year, feeling up in Michigan to have – it was really a special season. I don't think anybody thought this team was good enough to make that run. So, what was the feeling like out there?
Well, funny thing was, I actually had them in my winning the national title. And it was because, and it wasn't so much because I was a Michigan fan, but it was because I'm like, am I that tool this year that picks Michigan to go all the way? And I'm like, as soon as the Hunter injury happened from Virginia, I'm like, yep, I think this is the time. Puts Michigan in winning the national title, and all of a sudden they're in there playing Villanova. I realistically thought that maybe they'd make the Sweet 16 but fall to North Carolina. But once A&M beat UNC, that's when I thought, we got this.
Yeah, that bracket opened up in a hurry for them. It wasn't really an intimidating bracket to begin with. And then, all hell kind of broke loose with the top teams.
Yeah, and then this team proved that when they were not making their threes, they had to get inside and score. And they almost didn't do that against Florida State in the Elite Eight. But once they started to get inside and make those buckets, and they have to utilize Teskey in the middle to do that this year, they have the dual threat of scoring, whether it's inside the arc or outside of it.
Does Michigan, are you in any of those preseason tournaments or any big non-conference games to kind of keep an eye
on? We do have a rematch, actually, this year with Villanova. That's coming up in about a week and a half or so.
That's great. Now, one of my favorite things about college basketball is that they don't mess around. They do start with big-time games. A lot of college football, you open up, it's Powerhouse versus FCS or Powerhouse versus Sun Belt. Tuesday night the season starts, and we get right into it. Kentucky, Kansas, or Kansas, Michigan State, and Kentucky Duke. So I'm super excited for those 2 games.
Yes, definitely. So our non-conference schedule, I've actually pulled it up. Villanova and the Gavitt tip-off games. UNC at home in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Those are your highlight games.
Those are great. I'm looking forward to seeing those games. I want to see how this team can kind of bounce back from last year, Michigan.
And even tonight we're playing Northwood in an exhibition.
I might not watch that one. I might skip that one.
Yeah, I probably won't watch it either because we're after this podcast I'll have to grab dinner on Friday night. But besides the point, very much forward to this season. And as for your Cincinnati Bearcats, well, looking forward to that as well for you guys.
Yeah, no, thank you. It'll be an interesting season. Hopefully we can take care of Ohio State to start for you.
There you go. And I'll also, of course, ask Mick Cronin, your coach, is he healthy? Because I know he's had some health scares over the years.
Yeah, everything that I've heard over the last year or so is that he's full strength. I think he had a little scare. He's sort of calmed down his style a little bit. I think he understands his limits. I think he also understands he's a young daughter, so he's kind of toned it down a little bit. He'll take it easy.
That's good to hear. So, of course, I will ask right now, even though we still don't know where any team is at yet, tell me your final four.
Kansas.
Okay.
Kentucky. I don't want to just go chalk. I'm going to go Kansas and Kentucky.
Sure.
Kentucky, they bring in their top guys like they always do, but they also have a lot of their returning top recruits from last year. So I like the experience that they have.
Wait,
Kansas,
there's people on Kentucky that are not freshmen?
They have
I never
some
knew.
really good sophomores on their team.
I never knew.
Believe it or not, I don't think they're going to have a senior day this year. God forbid they ever do that. But they might have a sophomore day.
Hey, the new senior day in college basketball.
There's what?
The new quote-unquote senior day in college basketball. Sophomore day.
Is the last home game for all the freshmen. But, no, they have P.J. Washington was the top recruit, Nick Richards, and Quade Green are three guys that returned. And they also brought in Reed Travis, a grad transfer from Stanford. So, they have some guys to go with some of their freshmen. Kansas has the Lawson twins, who sat out last year transferring from Memphis. I like both of them to make the Final Four. I'm going to go against the grain here. I'm not going to say Duke. Okay. I don't like – they have all the freshmen. I don't think Duke – part of me thinks Virginia. I think they're going to come out with a vengeance. I think they're going to be a little bit more evolved offensively. They've had a lot of time to stew over what happened last year. Mm-hmm. And let's go with a wild card for the fourth one. I haven't actually thought about it, but let's go with Tennessee. I know that they're not really a wild card. They are the sixth-ranked team in the country, but they also return a lot of guys from a team that was very good a year ago. So, Kansas, Kentucky, Virginia, Tennessee.
Sounds good. My Final Four right now, and this is also kind of going off of how my brackets are, I'm going to go Kentucky, because every time I pick Kentucky to go far, they do. Give me Duke, actually. Yes, it does scare me a bit with the freshmen that whenever I pick Duke to go far, they crap out early. But I'm excited to see what Zion Williamson does this year for Duke. Give me Tennessee. That was going to be my wild card. But since you had mentioned it, I like Tennessee to go to Final Four as well. Actually, give me Virginia. It sounds a little crazy, but I like your thought of Virginia being on a vengeance this year after losing to UMBC and turning this NCAA tournament on its head. After one injury, it seemed like, UMBC beats them by 20 and almost goes to the Sweet 16. If you watch the game against Kansas State, they were within one possession like 5 times in the last 5 minutes of the game before Kansas State closed out the game on a 6-0 run.
Yeah, and Kansas State's a weird team. A lot of people are high on them. I wasn't high on them last year. Not high on them this year. I don't see it, but I guess we'll see. Yeah, that was a weird night because UMBC crushed Virginia, and at the same time, Buffalo crushed Arizona.
Yes. So
there's just a weird night, and that all happened in Cincinnati's region. So I was sort of on the edge, freaking out a little bit, but then, whatever happened with Cincinnati. We don't need to talk about it.
Very understandable. that you feel the same way that I did back in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, when Michigan lost to Ohio University.
I remember that game. It was just funny because I root for a bunch of losers. I root for the Knicks, the Mets. I'm actually a Cowboy fan, and Cincinnati basketball hasn't had success in a long time, but it hurt. I haven't had that feeling in a very, very long time where I was it felt like I was stabbed. It felt like someone died. It was just a really, really disgusting feeling when Cincinnati was eliminated last year. Just the way and how it happened was just, yeah. Moving on.
Let's just say this, at least you're not a Virginia fan going through that.
No, it could be worse. Virginia and Arizona both got blown out in the first round, although I might have preferred that given the way that Cincinnati went out.
And that may have seemed like justice from what happened with the Alonzo Trier scandal. with
Yeah,
Arizona.
no, I think that was karma coming back to get Arizona. They just ran into a buzzsaw apparently in Buffalo.
The Buffalo Bulls, not Bills. If you listen or if you look at Ryan McGee's bottom 10 in college football, great article. Those are funny.
No, I love that article, and I will say the Buffalo Bulls are a significantly better football team than the Buffalo Bills. They actually have 2 NFL players on that roster, QB Tyree Jackson and wide receiver Anthony Johnson. They're a lot of fun to watch. The Bills, on the other hand, are just not fun to watch. They're terrible.
I was going to say 2 NFL players. You mean on the Bulls or the Bills? Ooh.
I think the Bulls might have more future NFL players than these Bills do. I like that.
Throwing some heat on the first official Apple Podcast edition of the Tom Green Podcast. So, I will also say before I ask you the final question, there are actually 2 other podcasts that are on the Apple Podcasts, so you can get kind of a sense of where the show goes. 2 football shows, Lions Seahawks and Lions Vikings previews. So you also those other 2 shows to listen to if you're on Apple. And of course, my last question, as always, do you have anything else to add to this wonderful Tom Green podcast?
No, this really was wonderful. I'm glad we got to do this. I wish, I feel like this would be more fun if you and I had better teams to root for. You got the Tigers and the Mets are both terrible. I'm not really sure how the Red Wings are doing, but I'm actually an LA Kings fan, and they really suck. Pistons are doing well. They're still kind of a middle-of-the-pack team. Knicks stink. And then the Lions and the Cowboys are just kind of there. So, hopefully we can do this again in a couple. Hopefully we do it before a couple of years. But in a couple of years, hopefully we have a team that we can do this again and really talk and get into it.
Definitely. As for my Tigers, I'm hoping for 70 wins this next year to get things really rolling under Gardenhire. And I do kind of regret missing the Lions-Cowboys preview for you, but we've gotten acquainted just right after that Lions-Cowboys game, which Zeke ran all over my Lions.
Yeah, I think that preview would have been, you stink, he stinks, this guy stinks. There's not a whole lot to talk about with the Cowboys. And the Lions are doing pretty well right now. What do you think about Golden Tate, your boy, getting traded earlier this week?
Golden Tate getting traded, it was a business move. I really thought that I would have been interested to see what Quinn was going to do had we won this week to get to 4-3 rather than 3-4. But as for the business side of things, it's actually not a bad move, and it's because I don't think Quinn wanted to re-sign him. And if you don't want to re-sign him, get something for him. Maybe they could have gotten a second or a first, but at least a third is something, and it actually swaps the pick. Not quite swaps the pick, but you pretty much swap Deshaun Hand for Golden Tate, and you get that third-round pick back. So
the third-round pick is really something. That's a valuable pick, if you use it correctly, of course.
Mm-hmm. So business-wise, I don't mind the move. I'm going to miss Tate, but I don't mind the move, actually.
Yeah, no, it makes sense from a business standpoint, and hopefully it frees up more targets for my guy, Kenny Galladay, and my fantasy team.
Galladay and Jones will both have over 50 yards in just about every game they play because Stafford's a gunslinger. So with that being said, definitely a great show. Anything else to add?
No, just, thanks for having me. This was a ton of fun, and I hope we can do it again. And again, congrats on the Apple acceptance. I'm looking forward to hearing more future podcasts from you.
Oh, definitely. I'm hoping that this will get me even more guests on the spectrum of Apple. So, thanks again, Mike. He is Mike Schneid. Check out Mike Drop Sports, and this has been a wonderful Tom Green podcast.